I was reborn on the very day of my divorce from the billionaire CEO Holt Fu, who threw the agreement in my face and told me to get lost. In my previous life, I was obsessed with him, madly in love, only to be sent to a mental institution by him and his first love, dying a miserable death. This time, I smiled, signed the papers, and took the sky-high divorce settlement. Holt Fu, do you think this is the end? No. This is just the beginning of you losing everything and being utterly disgraced. A violent feast of revenge, one that belongs only to me. The sharp scent of disinfectant pierced my nostrils. I jolted awake, but what greeted my eyes wasn't the stark white ceiling of the psychiatric hospital. Instead, it was a familiar yet strange crystal chandelier, luxurious, cold, just like the cage that had imprisoned me for 3 years, the marital home I shared with Holt Fu. Aria Lin, sign it. A voice colder than the light itself struck me. I turned my stiffened head and saw the man I had loved for 10 years, and hated for just as long, Holt Fu. He stood tall and straight before the massive floor-to-ceiling window, dressed in a well-tailored black suit, backlit. His silhouette was as strikingly handsome as a deity's. Yet his eyes, fixed on me, were filled with undisguised disgust and impatience. In his hand, he held a document. Clearly, it was the divorce agreement. I was stunned. This wasn't the scene from before my death. I had died on a sickbed in a psychiatric hospital after being forcibly injected with sedatives, my heart failing. Just before dying, I overheard from the nurses' chatter that Holt Fu had finally held a grand, century-defining wedding for his first love, Leah Su, while I, the vicious ex-wife, became the laughingstock of the entire city. So, have I been reborn? I was reborn 3 years ago, on the very day I divorced Holt Fu, in my previous life. On this day, I cried and screamed like a madwoman, clinging to his leg and refusing to let go. I tore up the divorce papers and used every despicable means to beg him not to abandon me. In the end, all I received was his deeper contempt and the words, "You disgust me." Before being roughly dragged out of this villa by his bodyguards, from then on, my life spiraled downward. To get back at him, I committed countless foolish acts, targeting Leah Su. But each time she unintentionally diffused the situation, making me appear increasingly vicious and ridiculous. Eventually, Holt Fu completely lost his patience and, claiming I was mentally unstable, personally sent me to that living hell. Endless regret and pain washed over me like a tidal wave. For a man who never loved me, I had turned myself into a complete tragedy, a vicious supporting character for others to mock and ridicule. Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. Aria Lin. What kind of trick are you playing now? Holt Fu, seeing that I hadn't responded for a while, furrowed his brow even more tightly. My patience is limited. I slowly sat up straight from the sofa, shifting my gaze from his cold, stern face to the divorce agreement. My heart was pounding wildly in my chest, not out of sorrow, but from an indescribable, near-death to revival kind of ecstasy. Heaven has given me a second chance. This time, I won't be foolish anymore. All that nonsense about love and unwavering devotion, get the hell away from me. All I want is revenge, in the most direct, cruel, and violent way possible. I will repay Holt and Leah Su 100, 1,000 times over for all the humiliation and pain I suffered in my past life. The phrase, slapping and revenge aren't just about logic. They also require the crushing force of violence exploded in my mind. That's right, logic and schemes are too slow. What I want is the absolute, overwhelming power to crush them. I took a deep breath, suppressing all the surging emotions, forcing a smile uglier than a grimace onto my face, and spoke in a hoarse voice. Fine, I'll sign. Holt Fu clearly didn't expect me to agree so readily. A flicker of surprise flashed in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by his usual coldness. He probably thought this was just another one of my new tricks, playing hard to get. He threw the agreement and a pen onto the coffee table with a sharp thwack, as if urging this piece of trash to be cleared away quickly. I didn't look at him. Instead, I reached out with a slightly trembling hand and picked up the agreement. In my past life, I tore it up without even reading it. This time, I read it word by word. The agreement was simple. Holt Fu, true to his reputation as a top-tier businessman, had calculated everything clearly. As the at-fault party, though I had no idea what I'd done wrong, I was to leave with nothing. He generously offered me a run-down old house in the suburbs and a severance pay of 1 million yuan, 1 million, to his billion-dollar fortune, isn't even a drop in the bucket, it's practically an insult. I read to the end, my gaze landing on a line of fine print in the supplementary clause. As compensation, 3% of the equity in Fu Group's subsidiary Fenghua Entertainment will be transferred to Aria Lin. I froze. This clause, I had no idea about it in my past life, because back then, I was so out of my mind that I didn't even read the agreement. Fenghua Entertainment is the most insignificant of Fu Group's many subsidiaries, suffering losses year after year, barely staying afloat. Holt Fu has long wanted to spin it off to him. This 3% equity is probably just like that 1 million, worthless scraps to throw at a beggar. However, only I, who have been reborn from the future, know that Fenghua Entertainment will skyrocket in just 6 months due to a phenomenal web series called Above the Firmament, with its stock price increasing 100-fold, and the investment for this series was secured shortly after by a mysterious investor with a keen eye for talent, and now, this opportunity is right in front of me. This is like a blade of revenge handed to me by fate itself. I picked up the pen and, without any hesitation, signed my name at the end of the agreement. Aria Lin. The handwriting is a bit crooked because my hand is trembling, a tremor of extreme excitement. After signing, I pushed the agreement toward Holt Fu, looked up, and for the first time calmly and clearly met his eyes. Mr. Fu, it's been a pleasure working with you. I hope we never meet again. Holt Fu looked at me, his eyes carrying a hint of scrutiny and examination, as if he were seeing me for the first time. He had probably never seen me so calm and rational before. In my previous script, I was always that hysterical, foolish woman who had nothing to offer but her love for him. Let's hope so, he said, collecting the agreement and turning away coldly. You have 3 days to move out of here. After saying that, he strode away on his long legs, leaving this home without a trace of nostalgia. The door slammed shut with a bang, separating 2 worlds. I collapsed onto the sofa, gasping for breath. Tears finally fell silently, unable to be held back, but these were not tears of sorrow, they were tears of rebirth. Holt Fu, Leah Su, the game has only just begun. I took out my phone and dialed the number of a distant cousin who, in my previous life, had only helped me after I went bankrupt. He was a highly capable financial trader, but he had always been unlucky and never found the right opportunity. Cousin, it's me, Aria Lin. I need your help, right now, immediately. I have a sum of money and a bargaining chip that will soon be worth a fortune. My voice was calm and resolute, filled with an undeniable force. The first step of revenge is to turn the trash Holt Fu threw at me into the sharpest knife aimed at his heart. 3 days later, I stood punctually at the villa's entrance, dragging a suitcase. Holt Fu's butler, Uncle Wang, looked at me with a mix of sympathy and detachment in his eyes. Miss Lin, the car is ready. Thank you, Uncle Wang. I nodded politely to him. Over the past 3 years, Uncle Wang was one of the few people in this villa who did not treat me with cold indifference. In my previous life, when I was down and out, he secretly helped me out. I have kept this kindness in my heart. I didn't take the car sent by the Fu family. Instead, I hailed a ride-hailing car and headed straight to the financial district in the city center. My so-called entire belongings consisted of just 1 suitcase of clothes, a bank card with 1 million yuan, and the recently effective equity transfer certificate. In a cafe, I met my cousin, Lin Mo. He looked somewhat haggard, with heavy dark circles under his eyes, clearly not having had an easy time lately. Seeing me, he seemed surprised. Aria, you, and President Fu, divorced. I got straight to the point, pushing a document toward him. Cousin, this is my entire bet, and it's your opportunity too. Lin Mo picked up the document, and when he saw 3% equity in Fenghua Entertainment, his brow furrowed. Aria, don't be foolish. Holt Fu is humiliating you. Fenghua Entertainment is a bottomless pit. This equity is worthless. It might even be a liability. It is now, but not in 6 months. I looked him in the eye and said, word by word, I need you to use this 1 million, along with all the connections and funds you can mobilize, to help me leverage in short Yuanhang Technology, a subsidiary of the Fu Group. Lin Mo was utterly shocked. Are you insane? Shorting Fu Corporation, Voyager Tech is their flagship AI project this year, and its stock price is soaring non-stop. With the little money we have, throwing it in wouldn't even make a splash. It would be devoured in an instant. leaving nothing behind. 3 days from now, Voyager Tech will be hit with a shocking scandal. Their core technology was plagiarized. The founder will resign to take responsibility. And the stock will hit the limit down for 3 consecutive days. My voice was quiet, yet it carried a chilling, almost magical authority. This was something I had read in financial news in my past life. At the time, I was too caught up in my entanglement with Holt Fu to pay any attention to business news. But now, it has become my most powerful weapon. Lin Mo stared at me intently, trying to detect even the slightest hint of a joke or madness on my face, but all he saw was calm and resolve. How did you know?" he asked with difficulty. "Don't worry about how I know," I interrupted him. "Cousin, this is our only chance. If we succeed, we'll get the first installment of our revenge fund. If we fail, I'll just end up with nothing. And me, I've long had nothing to lose." My words struck Lin Mo's heart like a heavy hammer. He looked at me, this cousin of his who used to be naive and foolish, always chasing after men, as if I had been completely reborn overnight, after a long silence. He suddenly slammed the table. "Fine. I've long been fed up with those elite returnees from Wall Street. Let's do it. If we lose, worst case, I'll go beg under the overpass with you." I laughed. In this lifetime, I chose the right allies. The next 3 days were the most thrilling of my life. Lin Mo truly proved to be a natural market operator. Using my 1 million as margin, he established a massive short position of 50 million through various complex operations and channels. It was like walking a tightrope over a cliff. The slightest disturbance, and we would be shattered to pieces in an instant. At 2 p.m. on the 3rd day, 1 hour before the stock market closed, our account was on the verge of being forcibly liquidated due to the continuous rise in Yuanhang Technology's stock price. Lin Mo's shirt was soaked with sweat, his eyes bloodshot, fixed intently on the screen. "Arya, there are 30 minutes left. If there's still no news, we're all finished." His voice trembled, my knuckles turned white as I gripped the coffee cup, but my face remained calm. I was gambling. Betting that my memory hadn't failed me, betting that this second chance at fate hadn't veered off course. 2:45. A bold red news alert instantly ignited the entire financial circle. Shocking. Evidence confirms that leading billion-dollar giant Yuanhang Technology's core algorithm is suspected of plagiarizing a Silicon Valley startup. As soon as the news broke, Yuanhang Technology's stock price plummeted at a terrifying speed, like a kite with its string cut. "It's falling, it's falling, it really is falling." Lin Mo was so excited he almost jumped up. The green K line on the screen, like a magnificent waterfall, cascaded downward. Our account balance, once a glaring red negative, instantly turned green and began soaring upward at a frantic pace. Limit down, in the final minute before the market closed. Yuanhang Technology's stock price was firmly pinned to the limit down board. "We have won." Lin Mo slumped in the chair, unable to utter a word for a long time. I stared at the long string of numbers in the account, with a principal of 50 million. The combination of leverage and the market crash had brought us nearly 200 million in pure profit. This is my 10 billion breakup fee. Holt Fu, you dismissed me with 1 million and a pile of worthless paper, but I, using your mercy, have torn the first piece of flesh from you. This feeling is more exhilarating than any false warmth I've ever experienced in my past life. Arya, what on earth? Lin Mo finally snapped out of it, looking at me as if I were a monster. "Cousin, this is just the beginning." I stood up and patted his shoulder. "Now, we have money. The next step is to acquire Fenghua." "Acquire, but you already have 3% of the shares." "Not enough," I said coldly. "I want 100% control. I want this blade to be completely in my own hands." Holt Fu is probably overwhelmed by the scandal at Yuanhang Technology right now. He would never imagine that the trash he discarded has quietly turned into a hungry wolf with 200 million in cash. Eyeing the weakest link in his empire, he would never expect that this is only the beginning. I don't just want to humiliate him or make him regret. I want a complete, violent, economic annihilation. I want him to watch helplessly as the business empire he built crumbles and collapses. Inch by inch, in my hands. I want him, even if he has nothing. With funding, everything becomes simple. Fenghua Entertainment was originally a marginal asset of the Fu Group, suffering continuous losses. And the shareholders had long wanted to offload it. When I commissioned Lin Mo to anonymously issue a cash acquisition offer at a price 20% higher than the market value, there was almost no resistance. Those small shareholders seemed to see a savior and couldn't wait to dump their junk stocks. The only possible obstacle was Holt Fu himself, although he looked down on Fenghua as the absolute controlling shareholder of the Fu Group. Any major equity changes in its subsidiaries required his approval. I had Lin Mo deliberately schedule the acquisition proposal and the mess of Yuanhang technology to be submitted to him on the same day, as expected. The overwhelmed Holt Fu only gave the acquisition proposal a cursory glance. Upon noticing that the buyer was offering a premium, which could help the group recoup some losses, he hastily signed off on it. He didn't even bother to check who the anonymous buyer was, in his eyes. It was just a piece of scrap paper to be signed while disposing of some trash. A week later, when Lin Mo placed a brand new document in front of me, I officially became the sole owner of Fenghua Entertainment with 100% control. I renamed the company to Nirvana Entertainment. I stood in the old president's office of Nirvana Entertainment. Looking around, everything here exuded an air of decay, with employees listless and lifeless. But I knew this would be the place where my empire would rise. The first thing I did was to call an all-staff meeting. When I appeared in the conference room in a professional suit and high heels, everyone was stunned. Some of them recognized me as Holt Fu's infamous ex-wife. Is that her? That shrew, Aria Lin? Why is she here? Did she buy the company? What a joke, damn it. The company was already on the verge of collapse, and now we have a clueless woman as the boss. We'd better start looking for new jobs. The murmurs, the mocking laughter, and the disdainful looks felt like sharp knives piercing through me. I walked expressionlessly to the head of the table and slammed a document on it. From today onward, I am Aria Lin, the CEO of Nirvana Entertainment. I know what you're thinking, that I'm just a trophy wife who got here by relying on a man, a complete outsider who knows nothing. I paused, my gaze sharply scanning each person. So, I'm giving you an opportunity, and also giving myself one. This is all the company's current projects, along with each of your profiles. Now, you can speak freely and tell me why the company has ended up in this state. The meeting room fell into a dead silence. A middle-aged man wearing black-rimmed glasses, who appeared quite mature, stood up. His name was Zhong Kai, the company's project director. Mr. Lin, with all due respect, the biggest problem our company faces is the lack of funds, resources, and, most importantly, good projects. The scripts we have are all leftovers that others have passed on. Our artists are all unknown figures far from the limelight, making it impossible to promote them effectively. The annual funding allocated by the Fu Group is barely enough to keep the basic operations running. His words echoed the thoughts of everyone present. Well said, I nodded. So, the second thing I'm doing is addressing the money issue. I glanced at Lin Mo, who understood and projected a pre-prepared PPT onto the large screen. I will inject 500 million into the company. Whoa, the entire conference room instantly erupted in an uproar. 500 million. This figure is simply astronomical for the nearly bankrupt Fenghua. Everyone looked at me as if I were a madman. They couldn't believe that this woman, abandoned by Holt Fu, could actually produce 500 million in cash. These 500 million will be used for 3 purposes. I continued, ignoring their shock. First, to establish an S-level film and television project. I've already selected the script, titled Above the Firmament. Director Zhong, you will be fully responsible for this project. With an unlimited budget, I pushed a printed script summary toward Zhong Kai. His hands trembling, he took it, and after just one glance, his eyes lit up. Second, establish a new talent agency department, led by the top agent, Sister Jin. I will provide you with a list of people, and you must sign them at all costs. No matter which company they currently belong to, I will cover the penalty fees for breaching their contracts. The Sister Jin I mentioned is the legendary agent who, in my previous life, single-handedly nurtured 3 Best Actor winners and 1 Best Actress winner. However, at the moment, she is being sidelined due to having offended someone. The people on my list are all hidden gems who became hugely successful in my past life but have yet to make their mark now. Third, all employees will have their salaries doubled. Project bonuses will be calculated separately. If the first 2 points were about painting a grand vision, this third point is a solid shot of adrenaline. The entire conference room instantly shifted from a deathly silence to a feverish excitement. Everyone's gaze changed. Shifting from disdain and contempt to fervor and longing, I used the simplest, most direct approach to win over their hearts in the shortest time possible, because I knew that for those who had struggled at the bottom for too long, no empty promises could compare to the tangible value of real money. Shortly after the meeting ended, Holt Fu's call came through. I looked at the familiar name on the screen, a mocking curve forming at the corner of my mouth as I pressed the answer button. Aria Lin. Is it you? His voice was filled with suppressed anger and disbelief. You're the one who acquired Fenghua, President Fu, you're quite well informed. I chuckled, my tone as casual as if we were discussing the weather. But you should call me President Lin now. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to mention. It's now called Nirvana Entertainment. On the other end of the line, there was a deathly silence. I could almost picture Holt Fu's face, so dark it seemed as if water could drip from it. He calculated everything, but he never expected that the trash he casually discarded would soon transform into something he couldn't comprehend. He never imagined where I got so much money from. Where did you get the money? He finally spoke, his voice as cold as ice. That's none of your concern, Mr. Fu. Perhaps I should thank you. That 1 million breakup fee came in quite handy. I deliberately provoked him. Aria Lin, what exactly are you trying to do? What are you doing? I laughed. President Fu, have you forgotten? We're already divorced. What I do is none of your business. I'm just running my company and doing my business. You'd better not try any tricks, or else what? I cut him off. My voice instantly turning cold. Holt Fu, drop that CEO act. You have no right to threaten me now. Focus on managing your own voyage tech and your first love. Don't bother me again with that. I hung up the phone directly. Listening to the busy tone on the phone, I felt a surge of satisfaction. Holt Fu, this is just the beginning. You're feeling angry, feeling out of control. Good. Next, I'll make you experience even more powerlessness, despair, and pain. The second step of overwhelming force is to build an empire in the field you're most familiar with, using the very methods you look down on the most, leaving you far behind and unable to catch up. The reform of Nirvana Entertainment is in full swing. The injection of 500 million yuan in cash acted like a shot of adrenaline, bringing the entire company back to life. Zhong Kai, leading the team and armed with the script of Above the Firmament that I provided, began searching nationwide for the most suitable directors and actors. Sister Jin, with the list I provided and strong financial backing, successfully signed several potential stars who would later become top-tier celebrities, and I became the biggest mystery in the city's high society. Everyone wanted to know which new sugar daddy the abandoned woman cast out by the Fu family, had attached myself to be able to make such a grand gesture. Holt Fu also sent people to investigate me, but Lin Mo had already made thorough preparations for me. All the fund flows pointed to a fictitious overseas investor, so clean that no flaws could be found. The more he couldn't find out, the more agitated he became. And this restlessness reached its peak a month later at a charity banquet. This banquet gathered almost all the city's celebrities and dignitaries, and Holt Fu was naturally among them. By his side was his companion, none other than his long-cherished first love, Leah Su. Leah Su wore a white evening gown, with delicate, light makeup, looking as pure as an untainted lily. She held Holt Fu's arm, accepting everyone's blessings and admiration. They looked so perfectly matched. Like a couple made in heaven. In my previous life, it was at this very banquet that I completely lost control. I rushed forward, splashed red wine all over Leah Su, and called her a shameless mistress, only to be slapped in public by Holt Fu, becoming the mad and jealous woman in everyone's eyes. But in this life, as the CEO of Nirvana Entertainment, holding the invitation and gracefully stepping into the banquet hall, all eyes were fixed on me. I was wearing a sharply tailored red gown. Radiant and imposing, with an aura in full display, a proper yet distant smile graced my face, a stark contrast to the disgraced abandoned woman I was just a month ago. Holt Fu's gaze locked onto me the moment I entered. His eyes were as complex as a thick fog, filled with shock, scrutiny, and a trace of admiration that even he hadn't noticed, and Leah Su beside him, upon seeing me, paled almost imperceptibly for a moment but quickly regained her delicate, pitiable demeanor. She leaned softly against Holt Fu and whispered, "Brother Holt, Arya Lin, she seems to have changed a lot." Her voice was neither too loud nor too soft, just enough for those around to hear. It was filled with innocence and concern, as if I were the villain who might harm her. The same old green tea tactics. I ignored them and walked straight towards several well-known directors and producers in the industry, exchanging pleasantries and business cards, my eloquence, my insight. And the 5 billion yuan investment plan from Nirvana Entertainment behind me quickly made me the center of the banquet. Holt Fu was left out in the cold, his expression growing increasingly unpleasant. He was used to being the center of attention, and even more accustomed to me orbiting around him like a satellite. But now, not only had I not glanced at him, I had even stolen all the spotlight. This sense of losing control made him feel utterly furious. Finally, Lia Su couldn't hold back any longer. Holding a glass of champagne, she gracefully walked toward me, a sweet and harmless smile on her face. "Sister Arya Lin, long time no see. I'm so happy for you. Seeing how well you're doing now." She raised her glass, putting on the appearance of genuinely wishing me well. All eyes were instantly drawn over, everyone eager to see how this showdown between the ex-wife and the first love would unfold. "Is that so?" I swirled the red wine in my glass, looking at her with a faint, ambiguous smile. "Then I really should thank you and President Fu for kicking me out of that cage." Lia Su's smile stiffened for a moment before turning even more fragile. "Arya Lin, please don't say that. Holt and I both want you to be happy." Are you still blaming us?" As she spoke, her eyes reddened, as if I had said something harsh to bully her. "Master, truly a master. With just a few words, you've positioned yourself as the victim. If it were me in my past life, I would probably be so furious right now that I'd be stomping my feet and cursing without thinking. But now, I just let out a light laugh. "Blame you? Why would I blame you?" I feigned surprise and retorted, "I should be thanking you. If it weren't for President Fu cutting his losses in time and kicking me, the unqualified substitute, aside, how could you, the real one, have gotten what you wanted?" I emphasized the word substitute with great force. Lia Su's face instantly turned deathly pale. The surrounding crowd let out a muffled gasp. Everyone knew that I bore some resemblance to Holt Fu's late first love, who was also Lia Su's older sister. It was widely rumored in our circle that Holt Fu married me only because I was a substitute. But no one had ever dared to voice this open secret, and now I, the person involved, have personally exposed it. "You, what nonsense are you talking?" Lia Su panicked, instinctively refuting, "Nonsense." I raised an eyebrow, leaned closer to her, and said in a voice only the two of us could hear, "Lia Su, do you really think what you did was flawless? 3 years ago, when your sister was in a car accident, where were you? Why didn't you answer her last call for help? Were you hoping she would die so you could replace her and become the one by Holt Fu's side?" Every word I spoke was like a poisoned dagger, stabbing fiercely into Lia Su's heart. She trembled all over, her pupils contracting sharply. The look she gave me was filled with fear and disbelief, as if she were staring at a demon that had crawled out of hell. These were the deepest secrets buried in her heart. How could I possibly know? In my past life, I only learned these truths on my deathbed. From a nurse who had also been framed by Lia Su was no innocent, kind lily. She was a man-eating flower who rose to power by stepping on her sister's death. You, she pointed at me, her lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. "What's the matter? Did I hit the mark?" I took a step back, re-establishing the distance, my smile turning icy and mocking. "Oh, right, I forgot to tell you, that diary your sister left behind. I think I accidentally picked it up, of course." The diary was fake, I was bluffing her, but Lia Su didn't know that. She completely broke down, her mind fixated solely on the word diary. Like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, she let out a sharp scream and flung the champagne in her hand straight at me. "You lunatic, talking nonsense." This scene, how eerily familiar, only this time, the one splashing the drink was no longer me, but her. I had anticipated it, and with a slight shift of my body, the golden liquid missed me completely, splashing all over Holt Fu, who had just rushed over to help Lia Su out of the situation. The entire room fell into dead silence. Everyone stared at this scene in stunned silence. Holt Fu lowered his head, staring at the wine stains splattered across his expensive suit, his face as dark as the bottom of a pot. As for Leah Su, she regretted it the moment she threw the wine. She looked at Holt Fu, then at the shocked gazes of the people around her, and instantly realized what she had done. Her carefully cultivated image of a pure and innocent girl, built over many years, was destroyed in that moment. Holt, I didn't mean to, it was her. She provoked me, Leah Su explained frantically, tears streaming down her face. I stood to the side, like an outsider, watching the farce coldly. I even kindly handed her a tissue and said with a smile, Miss Su, with such unstable emotions, perhaps you should see a doctor. I know a good psychiatrist. Would you like me to refer you? These words were like a sharp slap, striking Holt Fu and Leah Su hard across the face, because everyone knew that not long ago, it was I who had been sent to a psychiatric hospital. Holt Fu suddenly looked up, his hawk-like eyes for the first time shining with scrutiny and doubt, not directed at me, but at Leah Su, who was weeping pitifully in his arms. He is not a fool, everything tonight is too abnormal. I, the madwoman, remained calm and composed, while Leah, who is usually gentle and kind, lost her composure in public and became hysterical. A seed of doubt was thus planted, and this is exactly the effect I wanted. I no longer looked at them, turned around, and made an elegant exit under a meaningful gaze. Holt Fu, Leah Su, are you satisfied with this public humiliation? Don't rush. This is just the appetizer. The real overwhelming defeat is yet to come. The farce of the charity gala became the front-page headline in the Circle the very next day. Although the Fu family used their connections to suppress all media coverage, in that upper-class society where there are no secrets, Leah Su's image as a shrew and the legend of my mysterious return had already become widely known. As a result, a huge rift developed between Holt Fu and Leah Su, but I had no time to enjoy their internal strife, because my grand plan for revenge had reached its most critical step. The start of filming for Above the Firmament. I almost gambled recklessly. Pouring most of Nirvana Entertainment's liquid assets into this project, I hired the top domestic film director to direct a web series, used the best special effects team, and ensured that all costumes, makeup, and props were meticulously crafted. Everyone thinks I'm crazy, believing I'm just burning money. Only I know what kind of frenzy this show will unleash once it airs. Meanwhile, Lin Mo quietly used our remaining funds to build an even larger short-selling matrix targeting the Fu Group in the financial markets. This time, our target is the core industry of the Fu Group, real estate. I clearly remember, in my previous life, 3 months from now, the government would introduce a major real estate market regulation policy, known as the strictest purchase restriction order in history. All real estate companies operating with high leverage would face catastrophic consequences, and the Fu Group was the one with the highest leverage ratio among them. Holt Fu was completely unaware of this. He was still immersed in his business empire, busy dealing with the aftermath of the Yuanhang tech mess, calming the emotionally unstable Leah Su, while also having to divert attention to guard against what tricks I, his ex-wife, might pull next. He thought my small-scale activities in the film and television industry were nothing more than petty rivalries between women. He had no idea that a trap had been quietly laid right under his feet. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. Above the Firmament premiered exclusively on the streaming platform. On the first day of its release, the viewership numbers were mediocre. The company was shrouded in gloom and despair. Only I remained calm, instructing the marketing department to continue investing promotional resources as originally planned. The next day, the data began to climb. On the third day, word of mouth started to spread, with organic recommendations going viral across major social media platforms. By the end of the first week, Above the Firmament swept all the charts with an unstoppable momentum, becoming the phenomenal hit drama of the year. Nirvana Entertainment became legendary in one battle. The company's valuation, like a rocket, soared from an initial few $100 million all the way to $5 billion, and it's still growing. I, Aria Lin, have completely shed the label of Holt Fu's ex-wife, and become the hottest new star in the business world, a self-made, sharp-eyed legendary female CEO. And just as the popularity of Above the Firmament reached its peak that weekend, the other shoe finally dropped. The strictest purchase restriction order in history was announced without warning. As soon as the news broke, real estate stocks plummeted across the board, with widespread devastation. The stock price of the Fu Group immediately collapsed. On the first trading day, it hit the limit down as soon as the market opened. On the second trading day, it continued to hit the limit down. On the third trading day, it was still a limit down without any suspense. In just 3 days, the market value of the Fu Group evaporated by nearly 100 billion within the entire group. Panic spread like wildfire. The bank's collection calls flooded in. Partners withdrew their investments one after another, and an unprecedented crisis pinned Holt Fu, the business emperor, firmly on the edge of a cliff. Meanwhile, we, Lin Mo's team, who had shorted the stock at a high position, made a massive profit. In this battle, not only did we recover all the costs we had previously invested, but we also accumulated a terrifying amount of capital. Enough to compete head-on with the Fu Group. In the office, Lin Mo stared at the dazzlingly long string of numbers in the account, trembling with excitement. Aria, we did it. We really managed to shake the behemoth that is the Fu Corporation. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the financial center of the city, my gaze calm and unruffled. Shake it? No, that's not enough, I said coldly. I want it to fall, completely. At that moment, my personal phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, I answered, and from the other end of the line came a voice that was both familiar and unfamiliar, tinged with a hint of weariness and hoarseness. It was Holt Fu. Aria Lin. Where are you? Let's meet. His tone was no longer a high and mighty command but carried a hint of negotiation. I laughed. Holt Fu, have you finally decided to lower your noble head, President Fu? With your busy schedule, how do you have time for a small fry like me? I asked knowingly. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, as if he was trying hard to suppress his emotions. I want to purchase the second-round broadcasting rights and subsequent IP development rights for Nirvana Entertainment's Above the Firmament. Name your price. The mockery at the corner of my lips deepened. The Fu Group also has a film and television company under its umbrella, but this year's performance has been dismal, with no notable achievements. My hit series is now the only lifeline he can grasp to prove to the market and shareholders that the group still has the ability to generate profits. He wants to use money to buy my charity. President Fu, do you think I still lack money now? I retorted lightly. Aria Lin, he finally couldn't hold back. His voice tinged with anger. What exactly do you want? Isn't everything you've done just to get back at me? Fine, I admit, I treated you poorly in the past, and I apologize to you. Name your terms. As long as I can fulfill them, I'll agree to anything. Just sell me the copyright to Above the Firmament. An apology. It was as if I had heard the funniest joke in the world. In my past life, when I was locked in a psychiatric hospital, suffering endlessly, unable to live or die. Where was he? He was with his first love, basking in the world's blessings. Now, does his flippant apology erase all the pain? Holt Fu, my voice turned icy cold. Each word seeming to be dredged from an ice cellar. Do you think I did all this for your apology, to make you regret? No, you're wrong. I simply want to see you suffer, to see you lose everything, to see you kneel before me, begging for mercy like a dog. I will not sell the copyright to Above the Firmament. Not only will I not sell it, but I will also launch its film adaptation, its sequels, and its game adaptations. I will use it to earn billions, even trillions, in profits. And with that money, I will buy up the stocks of your Fu Group, delivering the deadliest blow when you are at your weakest. So, Holt Fu, put away your ridiculous conditions. The only thing you can do now is to clean your neck and wait for me to come and destroy everything you've built, piece by piece. After I finished speaking, I hung up the phone directly and blocked that number. Outside the window, the sunset was as red as blood. I knew that Holt Fu must be holding his phone right now, experiencing the taste of what I call despair that I brought upon him. This feeling, it's so good. The third step of overwhelming force, not only to defeat you in the field you excel at, but also to personally extinguish your last glimmer of hope when you are cornered. My declaration of war thoroughly enraged Holt Fu. Like a cornered beast fighting back, he began to mobilize all his resources to launch a frenzied counterattack against me. He attempted to poach talent from Nirvana Entertainment, only to find that my core team had long been firmly bound by equity and compensation far exceeding industry standards, making it impossible for anyone to shake them. He attempted to snipe us in the capital market, only to find that our cash flow was like quicksilver, seeping into every crack. Leaving him with no point of attack, Lin Mo, the financial genius, built an impregnable firewall for me. He even resorted to underhanded tactics, sending people to harass my family and creating negative public opinion about me. But all of this was within my expectations. I had already placed my family under protection, and those so-called scandals were nothing more than trivial jokes in the face of Nirvana Entertainment's powerful PR team. In the eyes of the public, my image had long been that of a legendary woman, independent, strong, and resilient, repeatedly suppressed by her ex-husband yet unyielding. Every attack from Holt Fu was like punching cotton. Not only did it fail to harm me in the slightest, but it also made his own situation increasingly difficult. His struggle, in my view, is both laughable and pitiful. He is like a puppet I manipulate at will, every move falling within my calculations. The real decisive battle will arrive in a month. Fu Group, due to consecutive sharp drops in its stock price, triggered the market value maintenance agreements signed with multiple banks. Facing enormous pressure to provide additional collateral and make early repayments, Holt Fu's only option is to raise $30 billion in cash within a week. Otherwise, the bank will have the right to enforce the seizure of his equity, and the Fu Group will face the risk of being carved up or even going bankrupt. He began frantically liquidating assets and contacting every ally who might be able to help. However, when a wall is about to collapse, everyone gives it a push. Those partners who once called him a brother now treat him like a plague to be avoided at all costs. And I, at that moment, launched the final assault. I had Lin Mo, representing Nirvana Capital, my newly established investment firm, announced to the entire market, "We will invest $30 billion to acquire the scattered shares and non-performing assets of the Fu Group." This news, like a bombshell, completely shattered Holt Fu's last hope. My actions sent a clear signal to the market. The Fu Group is finished, and I am the vulture ready to feast on the carcass. All shareholders began frantically selling their stocks, fearing they would be left holding the bag. Fu Corporation's stock price plummeted once again. On the eve of the decisive battle, I received a call from an unexpected person. It was Leah Su. Her voice was no longer weak and pitiful, but filled with venom and hysteria. "Aria Lin, you bitch. What do you want? You've destroyed Holt. You've destroyed everything I had." "I destroyed everything you had," I sneered. "Wasn't everything you had stolen from your sister?" "You're lying. My sister was willing. She knew Holt loved me." "Is that so?" I said calmly. "That diary, I've already handed it over to the police. The truth about your sister's car accident, I believe, will soon come to light." "Leah Su, what you should be worried about isn't Holt Fu, but whether you'll spend the rest of your life in prison." I was still bluffing her. There was no diary at all, but for someone with a guilty conscience, this was enough. From the other end of the phone came Leah Su's hysterical scream, followed by a deathly silence. I knew she was finished. The next day was the deadline for Holt Fu's fundraising. I sat in the top-floor office of Nirvana Capital, watching on the massive screen as the stock price of the Fu Group plummeted like a free fall after the market opened, shattering everyone's psychological defenses. At 10 in the morning, my secretary knocked and entered. "Mr. Lin, Holt Fu is here. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says he wants to see you." I turned the boss's chair around and looked out the window at the sky, where the clouds were light and the breeze gentle. "Let him in." A few minutes later, the office door was pushed open. Holt Fu walked in. He is no longer the high-spirited, lofty business emperor he once was. His suit is crumpled, his hair disheveled, his eyes sunken and bloodshot. In just a few months, he seems to have aged 10 years. He stood in front of my desk, staring at me intently, his eyes filled with a blood-red hatred and a hint of regret that I couldn't quite understand. "Aria Lin, you've won," he said, his voice hoarse as if sandpaper were grating. I didn't say anything, just quietly watched him. He suddenly fell to his knees with a heavy thud. This man, who was once so proud and arrogant, the man I had looked up to for 10 years, was now kneeling before me. "I beg you, spare Fu Corporation." His forehead pressed against the cold floor, his voice filled with broken desperation. "I will transfer all the shares under my name to you, free of charge. I only ask that you leave a way out for Fu Corporation, for the tens of thousands of employees." I looked at his humble posture, feeling no ripple of emotion in my heart, not even a hint of satisfaction. I only feel an overwhelming sense of irony. in my past life, I once knelt just like this, begging him not to abandon me, begging him to look at me. What was it he said back then? He said, "Aria Lynn, you're so cheap." Now, I return these exact words to him. "Holt Fu, you are despicable." I stood up, walked over to him, and looked down at him from above. "Do you think I did all this for your shares, for your Fu Corporation? No, I just wanted to see you like this, to see you kneeling before me like a dog. As for the Fu Corporation's employees," I scoffed, "you're only thinking of them now. When you were sacrificing the interests of other subsidiaries to protect your Yuan Hang Tech, why didn't you think of them? When you used the group's resources to suppress me just to vent your anger for your beloved Liasu, why didn't you think of them? Holt Fu, you've always been nothing but a selfish bastard. Your empire, built upon the suffering of others, was doomed to collapse from the very beginning." He looked up at me in despair, the last glimmer of light in his eyes fading away. "Aria Lynn," he murmured my name, as if trying to find even the slightest trace of the past in my face. "But there is nothing left." That Aria Lynn, who loved him to the point of madness, had long since died in the psychiatric hospital. "The game is over, Holt Fu." I picked up the phone on the table and dialed Lin Mo's number. "Let's begin." The final step in acquiring the Fu Group. In front of Holt Fu, I issued the final command. He collapsed to the ground, like a statue drained of its soul. Outside the window, the sunlight was blinding. My revenge has come to an end in the most thorough and violent, crushing manner. I didn't become a better version of myself to make him regret it. Instead, I became a more powerful, colder villain than him, and personally dragged him and everything he had into hell. This is the revenge I truly wanted. Grand finale. Half a year later, as the majority shareholder, I completed the restructuring of the Fu Group and integrated it into my Nirvana empire. I became the youngest woman on the Forbes list and a globally renowned business queen. As for Holt Fu, he completely vanished from the public eye. I heard that after leaving with nothing, he moved into that old, dilapidated house of mine in the suburbs. Without money or power, he is worse off than an ordinary person. Liasu's fate was even worse. She was sentenced to prison for allegedly being an accessory to indirect intentional homicide. The truth about her sister's car accident was exposed by a conscience-stricken insider. She became mentally unstable in prison and was eventually sent to the same psychiatric hospital where I once stayed. What a perfect cycle of cause and effect. That day, I was handling documents in the office when Lin Mo walked in. "Aria, this was taken by someone from the team below," he said, handing me a photo. In the photo was a man with a scruffy beard and tattered clothes, carrying bricks at a construction site. Under the sunlight, his hunched and destitute figure stood out. "It's Holt Fu. He seems to be making a living by doing odd jobs," Lin Mo said. I looked at the photo for a long time, then threw it into the shredder. "From now on, don't tell me any news about him," I said calmly. "To me, he is already an irrelevant stranger. There is no longer a place for him in my world." I stood up and walked to the huge floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the bustling city beneath my feet. My new life has only just begun. I am no longer someone's substitute, no longer someone's appendage. I am just Aria Lynn, the sole queen of this business empire.